White has just blundered with rook e1 in this sharp King's Indian defence position. All our pieces are on the attack, and there's a stunning series of sacrifices that leads to forced mate in 6 for black. Can you find it? Pause the video and have a go. Well done to those who found it. The move is, of course, bishop takes g2 check. Brilliant move. King takes g2, only move. And now the real stunner, queen h3 check. White cannot retreat with king h1 because g2 would be checkmate, so as White is forced forward with king takes h3. Knight g5 check. The king's forced back to g2. Knight h4 check. Doesn't matter if the king goes to f1 or h1, the result is the same. King h1, g2 mate. So we sacrifice our bishop and our queen to drag the king forward, then we have a forced sequence of checks with our knights to deliver checkmate. When I saw this, I was so stunned that I knew I had to make a video on it. Full credit to Mark Esserman for coming up with this and popularising it. Now let's see the chain of events that led up to that crazy position. This is a mainline King's Indian defence. We play e5, challenging the centre. White castles, we go knight c6, looking to goad White's pawn forward to lock the centre, bring our knight into the attack. So White plays d5, knight e7, and b4, the very dangerous bayonet attack. We typically play knight e8 here, clearing the way for this f5 break, but we can also play a5. This is a calmer version for those of us who are not willing to fulfill the prophecy. So White goes bishop a3, we would take on b4, White recaptures, and we go b6. This is the best as it covers the c5 square and makes this break very hard to achieve. White will play a4, a5 to break down this pawn structure and then play c5 later in the game. Meanwhile, we'll bring our knight back to e8 and still play for f5, putting pressure on this pawn, and if needs be, if it looks like White's about to play c5, we'll play c5 ourselves. So let's see, a4, knight e8, and knight b5. This is a very cunning move as it prevents c5 immediately. If we play c5, White will capture, we'll recapture, and then this pawn will be hanging because it's defended twice and attacked 3 times. So we have to play f5 instead, knight d2 to defend the pawn, and bishop h6. Now this is a slower way to play the position. If White ever goes f3, the idea of this bishop h6 move is we get bishop e3 check, and then the bishop can come back to cover c5. So it slows White's queenside play down. But you're not going to get such a strong counter-attack on the king side because White's already quite far advanced on the queen side. So we instead play knight e8. We go backwards to then go forwards. White goes a4. His best strategy is to push all the pawns on the queen side. a4, a5, c5, a6, then bring the bishop in via a3, break up the queen side as fast as possible. We'll play f5, a5, and knight f6. Now, it's useful to put pressure on this pawn for as long as possible because it will force White to play knight d2. His knight's a bit clumsy on d2, it gets in the way of the queen and bishop. And here, if we want to go for the prophecy, we'd play f4. But a bit of a smarter move at this stage is bishop h6. Again, if White plays f3, we'll have bishop e3 check, and the bishop's quite good on this diagonal. So, White's forced to keep his knight on d2 for the time being to cover the pawn, and thus hinders his queenside development. So, for example, White might go c5, we'll go king h8, maybe we'll play f4 down the line, but we'll bring the rook to the g file and start advancing the g-pawn. But instead we go f4, the most direct approach. The problem with this is White can actually go g3. He's not forced to play f3 and allow us to block the king side. And typically these positions are about +1, so it's pretty dire for black if he doesn't get checkmate. Anyway, White plays c5. We go g5, very clear plan. We want to go knight g6, h5, g4, after White's played f3 of course, and basically sacrifice the pawns, bring the queen to the attack and mate the king. We'll see how that works. White goes f3, knight g6, and bishop a3. His plan is to play b5 and potentially b6. His bishop will be putting pressure on this pawn and indirectly on the rook. We will be playing rook f8, rook f7, bishop f8, and maybe even rook g7. Now, this is such a strange manoeuvre, isn't it? Swapping the position of the rook and bishop, but it's extremely standard for the King's Indian, as the bishop will be free on this diagonal to sit on d6 and cement the centre, whereas the rook will be attacking on the g file. We play rook f7. This also removes the rook from this diagonal. White goes b5. Now this pawn is under a bit of pressure. White can go b6, knight b5 to put even more pressure on. So d takes c5, bishop takes c5. We've slowed White's attack down by splitting his queenside pawns. Now if we're going for the threat, we play h5. But a more positional move is bishop f8. This forces the bishop back to f2. White doesn't want to give up this bishop. And now after h5, if white goes for something like bishop c4, we can always go bishop d6. This bishop is immune. It covers the e-pawn. White will probably play b6, knight b5, but it's a lot slower. Instead, we go h5 and b6, g4. Our plan here is to play g3. If white plays h3, our bishop will always be ready to sack on this square. This bishop is extremely important in the King's Indian. If white is able to play something like knight b5, knight d6, knight c8, then black will basically be losing, because without this bishop ready to sacrifice itself on h3, black will find it very hard to break through. None of these knights can reach the h3 square. So anyway, white goes knight c4. A very strong plan for white is knight b5, capture on c7, and then sit on the e6 square. The bishop will be forced to give itself up, and then the kingside attack will be stalled. We go g3. Now this is not really a sacrifice, because if white captures on g3, we'll recapture. White can play something like d6, but the threat is to remove the knight from this diagonal, go queen h4, and then h2 mate. Black is basically going to do this no matter what white does, because this king has so little space that none of these defenders can join to defend the king. So we play knight d5, queen takes d5, queen h4. We're down a piece, but it doesn't matter. Rook fd1, clearing the f1 square for the king. Knight f4. Now we're threatening queen check and capturing on g2. D takes c7, for example, just showing you what would happen. Queen h2 check, king f1, and queen h1. Now white's forced to play knight at bishop's g1. We capture on g2, king e1, and queen takes g1. Material parity is restored, but we're on the attack. White's forced to put his king on the very ugly d2 square. We'll play queen f2, and despite the fact white's got a crushing central position, we can go with moves like bishop e6 and basically bring the rook to the d file and win material in the middle. So we go. So white goes king h1 instead of h takes g3. We go knight h7, clearing the way for the queen. d6 and of course queen h4. Very standard plan. You can basically play this no matter what white does on the queen side, because the two sides are not really connected. Bishop g1, defending this pawn, only move. If white was to go h3, of course we just sacrifice and it's checkmate after this sequence of moves. So bishop g1, bishop h3. Now this is what we're waiting for. We play bishop h3 unprompted. White's not even had to play h3. Our idea here is to sacrifice on g2. If white captures, we'll be bringing our queen to the attack. Now, here in a blitz game between Mark Esserman and the Grandmaster, white blundered with rook e1. Now this is lethal. White should have gone g takes h3. We'd go queen takes, and then rook f2 is the only move, and white's +2 here. Because gives up the rook, prevents this mate on g2, we're forced to take on f2, bishop takes, and despite the fact we're up 2 points of material, we're actually losing here because we can't get forces to the g2 square in time to deliver mate. So if we play something like bishop f6 with the idea of rook g7, white will just play bishop f1, kick our queen away, and he's successfully defended. He'll be playing b takes c7 then, and even d7. He's got 2 pawns on the 7th flank, and we will just lose this game. But of course, to do that, white had to see the sacrifice, come up with a counter sacrifice, and then see how to defend after that. So very difficult, and even a Grandmaster got this wrong. So the evaluation of +1.5 is pretty much beyond the reach of your average human chess player. Anyway, white went rook e1, and of course, the sacrifice that I showed at the start of the video, bishop takes g2 check, king takes g2, queen h3, give up the queen, king takes, and then you have this knight's ladder with knight g5, king g2, knight h4. Now if white goes king f1, I didn't mention before, but we can go g2, king f2, and knight h3 mate. Now a brilliant game from black. This is a risky way to play as black, but can be very rewarding if you get this kind of mate on the board, because no other position than the King's Indian will give you such fun positions. Anyway, I hope you've gained something from this video, and thank you for watching. I'll make more videos on the King's Indian defence in the future because it's such a fascinating opening. Thank you for watching, I'll see you in the next video.